Welcome to this week's episode of the Deliberate Leader podcast, and I'm so grateful today to be joined by Ros Weadman. Ros is a leading Australian authority on brand communication and reputation, and I've had the pleasure to get to know Ros in particular over the last 12 months, which has been awesome. So I wanted to share her brilliance with the rest of this community. Ros is a multiple award winner with more than 4 decades experience in public relations, branding and marketing comms. And Ros, I know that you've helped hundreds of personal, business and government brands to communicate their value, build their profile and also enhance their reputation. In a practical sense, Ros really helps organisations and leaders to get clear on who they are, what they stand for as a brand, and strategically align their brand purpose, principles and promise so they can attract and retain high quality employees and customers. I think we're in for a real treat today. Ros is a fellow of Communication Public Relations Australia and is the author of 3 books on marketing, reputation and personal branding, the most recent being Inner Brilliance. And Ros is going to share her Inner Brilliance. Welcome, Ros.
Thanks so much, Rita. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. I'm so thrilled to have you on today. Ros and I, no one else will know this, I think, except us, but we had the pleasure of doing some travel together in Queenstown late last year in beautiful New Zealand. And I really got to know Ros and really love what you stand for and how you do your stuff. And as I was thinking about guests, as I always do, I'm always on the lookout for who can help the deliberate leaders in my community. You immediately came to mind. So I'm glad we can connect today.
Thanks, Rita. I'm glad to be able to share some insights today with your audience as well.
Yeah, brilliant. So Ros, I know that and this is kind of customary. We ask every podcast guest this question, but in your time, obviously, in working with the diverse organisations that you have, I'm assuming that you would have worked with some exceptionally deliberate leaders, and then some leaders that are probably a little bit hesitant and maybe even resistant around leadership. But what would you say are those essential qualities or characteristics of a deliberate leader that you've observed?
Sure, Rita. Well, and as you said at the start, I kind of come from the personal branding reputation space. So I think that's one area where people can and should be really deliberate. And, it's all about self-leadership, and leadership, it does start with self. And I think there's 4 key qualities that I think deliberate leaders need to embrace when as part of their personal brand. And the first one is intention. And everything starts with mindset, doesn't it? And when you get intentional, you really get intentional about, your attitude, choosing your attitude, taking responsibility and accountability, and having an intention to really take action and being committed to building a personal brand. So I think when you've got intention, it does set in train, a whole lot of decisions and actions where you can actually move forward. So that's the first thing about being deliberate when it comes to personal branding. Secondly, it's all about alignment. I think deliberate leaders are very much aligned with being true to their beliefs and values, and they think, speak and act in accordance and in alignment with what they are, so that they're always coming from that authentic base, and they're more comfortable knowing that when they are aligned, that they're speaking their truth. The third one is consistency. When people show up consistently, whether it's online, on their website, on social media, even via email and on the phone, you build that credibility and trust, deliberately. You actually get to build a stronger rapport, and people get that sense of familiarity and predictability and dependability because they see you showing up consistently across all platforms, and whether it's in person as well. So that's a really important thing for deliberate personal branding. The fourth one is authenticity. And, that's a really interesting one because, it might sound strange that deliberate leaders need to be authentic. You sometimes think that would be a given. Unfortunately, authenticity isn't always a given when it comes to personal branding. A lot of people may project a persona that's not really quite true to who they may be, you know, when people are not in the room. And I think that you know, you need to be deliberately grounded in reality so that you know, as I said before, so that you're showing up consistently. If you're not authentic, what happens is you're either going to get exhausted from putting up the charade, or, you know, people's BS radars are also really honed these days, and people will soon see through the fakeness. So authenticity, being deliberate about being real, is really important.
Yeah, there's such good lenses, Ros, you know, upon which to focus, particularly around brand. And I think a lot of leaders, the comment that's often shared with me in deliberate leadership programs is, why do I even need a brand? And I think that sentiment comes because when we think about brand, for some people, I think they consider perfectly curated Instagram reels and feeds and walls, and, you know, kind of, they think about social media and that presence in a world which is it's artificial, right? Because it's curated. What's your view on that? Like, you know, do you ever get that question? Because I know I do. And if you do get that question around, why do I even need a personal brand? Like, why do I need to be strategic? Why do I need to design it? What's your view on that?
Yeah, look, I think we do. You know, the reality is that the marketplace is highly competitive. It's saturated, it's commoditized, and it's over communicated. And, you know, personal branding is one of those ways that you can most effectively stand out against your, I guess, competitors, if you like. Whether you're going for a job or whether you're pitching for business, you know, it doesn't really matter. It's about standing out. And personal branding is one of those ways where you can strategically leverage, you know, those strengths that you have, and not create. I think one of the biggest things is when you don't strategically leverage your personal brand, the problem is you can create a reputation that's fragmented. So people will have different experiences of you, you know, depending on, you know, whether it's been a direct or an indirect experience, but they'll form their judgments and opinions about you in a very inconsistent way. And so that means your reputation won't be cohesive. So personal branding is about strategically leveraging. Firstly, it's about getting clear on what, you know, what you stand for and all those things. But secondly, it's also about, you know, projecting that authentic, that cohesive brand, so that you are perceived in a cohesive and consistent way across platforms and across people.
Yeah, that's the image that's coming to mind is, you know, like when you put an outfit together and you've not really thought about your accessories and your clothes, and it's all a bit of a mismatch. And I get that image when you talk about that fragmented approach.
Yeah.
Because we know that when we put a bit more thought into that overall vision that we want to create, I actually think it helps people feel stable and comfortable, because we're giving them that sense of consistency and security, as opposed to a little bit of this and a little bit of that, depending on what we're responding to.
Yeah, and I think that's all about, you know, it plays into credibility and trust, and I think the other thing about being deliberate with your personal branding is that you're in the driver's seat of shaping your reputation. I mean, your reputation resides in the minds of other people. It's your reputation is a direct reflection of the personal brand that you're projecting. So, you know, to do that, if you're just leaving it to default, then it's being shaped in a way that you're not in control of. Whereas when you're deliberate about what you're thinking, what you're saying, how you're acting, how you're showing up, how you're lighting up, you know, then people get that sense of familiarity, and they build that. But it's also having that strong value proposition. I think people with a personal brand have done the thinking about what it is they stand for, and they're very clear on the value that they deliver. They're on their inner brilliance. They understand clearly what their specific problem-solving expertise is, and the problem that they solve for their clients. Whereas others who haven't done that thinking may not be as clear, and therefore may not come across as I guess, as confident in their self-worth even. And that's the other thing about personal branding. It gives you that sense of confidence about what it is that you can provide and what difference that you can make for your clients. So there's so much to be gained, that clarity. And then once you've got all that clarity and that intentional building of the profile increases your visibility. So whether it's in the workplace or whether it is in the industry or marketplace within a niche industry, it's really up to you. And I think even if you didn't want to build your visibility, that's okay. Just getting clear on what you stand for and what value you bring to the table is really an important part of the personal branding process. And I think a lot of people, there's a lot of myths around personal branding. People think, oh, well, why do I need it when people already know me? Or isn't it only for extroverts, or is it only for famous people? Or, personal branding now really is the future of work.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, the comments you made earlier on, which are absolutely 100% spot on. We are in such a competitive marketplace, more so than what we have been the last 2 or 3 years, where there were lots of jobs for not many candidates, whereas now we've seen a real swing in the fact that there are more candidates than jobs available in most industry sectors. In fact, can't think of an industry sector where that's not the case. And so your ability to really be able to stand out, as you say, whether it's looking for a job, but even when you're recruiting someone into your team, what's the first thing we do? We jump onto LinkedIn, or we have a look at social media. We try and become familiar with people before we've even had an opportunity to meet them. And if they don't have a social media presence, maybe we might ring someone that has worked with them just to get that sense. So it does speak to that reputation and trust and credibility that you mentioned there, Ros.
Oh, look, totally. And reputation, I mean, it's a 24/7 thing now. Your digital footprint is so expansive now. And as you say, people are looking on, they're Googling you before they have a business lunch with you, before they interview you. Just like you might look up a restaurant or a product and look at the reviews. People are doing that with people. And so, if you've done that kind of that work around, well, who is it? Who am I? And when you become self-aware, you get to also look into understanding what your blind spots might be as well. And so it's and when you're a leader, when you've got that self-awareness, typically you've got that emotional intelligence as well. And people are looking to their leaders to be a source of truth and to be an inspiration and to help guide them in what the team's mission is. And so I think deliberate leaders with a strong personal brand have done that work on themselves to help them to be deliberate where they're taking their team. As they say that, leadership is about taking people to places where they didn't even know they wanted to go until they get there. And if you've got a personal brand where you've done that work around knowing what your vision is and what your core values are and upholding them through your behaviors and being that role model to your team, then I think that's going to garner a lot of trust from your team, but also galvanize the hearts and minds of your team as you, so that when they're showing up for work every day, they kind of got that. They're not just know they're going to a workplace where they're making widgets, but they're actually they're on a mission to achieve something that's really worthwhile because the leader has instilled that sense of vision and inspiration in them.
Yeah, agree. That absolutely goes to connection and purpose.
Yeah,
Ros,
totally.
the title of your new book, which I know you've just recently released, is Inner Brilliance, which I absolutely love, and I love the cover. So we'll pop a link in our show notes because I think the artwork is just spectacular on the book. So check it out. Check out Ros's new book, Inner Brilliance. I'm so for leaders that are listening today, thinking, gosh, inner brilliance, like it's a term which you could get lost in, right? What do you suggest people do to be able to really tap into what their inner brilliance is? How would they start off?
Yeah, well, really, I think, well, firstly, inner brilliance is in my language, is kind of the intersection of where passion meets purpose and vision. If you can imagine that three Venn, model of passion. What it's understanding and unearthing what people are really passionate about, and then linking that to a worthy cause through purpose. And then once they've kind of made that connection, then, well, what is the vision that they have around that worthy cause? If I can spend my time and my efforts and my energy around my passion and link that to a worthy cause, and then have a vision about what the world looks like because of that, that brings to the fore all of my inner brilliance. It's kind of like, the message is that your inner brilliance is within you, and in a way that three-step little model helps to bring all that to bring it out to the world. And I use the metaphor of the hero's journey with, you think of Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, or you think of Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, or Neo in The Matrix, or even Harry Potter in the Harry Potter series. All of their inner brilliance is already within them, but they go through all the trials and tribulations and the challenges. And the same as any person in their work or any business owner, you go through all sorts of challenges and crises even in your business, and how you go through all that, and you might get a mentor to help you through it, and you learn so much. There's so many valuable lessons. And when you've gone through all that, and you come through the transformation with the kind of the lessons learned and the elixir, if you like, to take forward, that's kind of that inner brilliance. Like Luke in the Star Wars, the force was always within him, but he needed his mentor and his guide to bring it out. So this book is helps people navigate their own inner brilliance, to unearth it, and by anchoring it in what people really love to do, and what the world needs in terms of so it's not just understanding who you are and your strengths, but it's how you can use them to best effect to make the world a better place.
Yeah, I love that, because I mean, one of the things you talked about right at the start of that question, Ros, was linking it to a worthy cause. And
Yeah.
there's something so powerful, because it's you using that firstly tapping into that inner brilliance, as you say, but then using it for the purposes of having a greater impact.
Yeah.
So it's you using that inner brilliance effectively to achieve something outside of you, but that still has a part of you connected to it. I love that, because I think that really speaks to purpose and connection, and being able, as leaders in organizations, we know, and we hear this a lot, it's about the legacy that we leave. It's, leaving our team better. I was having a chat with someone actually over the weekend who has left an organization after 7 years. And she talked about, the last year in particular, because she knew she was exiting the organization. What kept her up at night in that last year was, have I done everything that, I needed to do? And have I left the team? So she was really thinking about that legacy. It was going to be beyond her. So how she left the organization, whilst it would have a throwback, either positive or negative, lucky for this person, positive around how she left it, but it really was no longer her concern, because she'd left it. But it's the sentiment that we have around leaving that place better because of my association with it, which I think is so, so powerful.
Yeah. I think, it's a little bit cliche, but people are looking about how they can leave their mark on the world, and we spend a third of our lives at work or running a business, and sometimes much more than that for many people. So, so I think making a difference, it's not just being ambitious, but it's about being meaningful, finding meaning through your work. And as you say, that it's a higher purpose. It's sharing with, how do we move humanity forward through the work that we do every day? We spend so much of our time thinking about work, doing work, and I think that it helps people to show up as their best selves when they can link that to something that's a bigger picture, and then people get to speak to their legacy through their work, and that's why I think the Inner Brilliance model is so it just helps people to kind of unearth that and discover it within themselves, so that they can, have that lens about, well, am I where I want to be? And maybe they're on a journey, and we're all on a journey, but maybe it can ask them some critical questions about that they can then make some decisions about where they might want to take their brand or their business or their work, and really derive some meaning from what they do every day.
Yeah, because you spoke a little earlier, Ros, about being really strategic and deliberate around it, because I think, in your experience, what happens when we're not deliberate about our brand? So, we spoke about it being a bit fragmented, people not having that safe and maybe stable experience of you if you don't have it. But I'm curious. So leaders that are kind of still needing to be convinced, I'm pretty sure by this point in the conversation they will be convinced, if they're not already, that they'll need it. But those that are really thinking about, how would I use this branding and positioning to be more deliberate? What are your thoughts on that? How could they use it in a really practical sense if they're going to invest that time in unearthing it, as you say?
Yeah, well, I think using it in a practical sense is, like, for example, I know understanding who I am and what I stand for, and my core values and my mission and my vision and all that. I mean, I write, it gives me clarity. It gives, firstly, in the most practical sense, it gives me clarity so that I can speak to people in a professional sense, or even at a barbecue. It doesn't matter, but I feel like having that sense of clarity means that in a practical sense, I can just speak to what I feel I stand for. And because of that, I get to write with clarity. My website gets to be clear on what I stand for, or my brochure for my practice, or so in a leadership sense, I think you have that confidence as well, and that level of influence and that sense of self-worth, so that if you go into a meeting, or you're presenting a pitch, or you're conducting a media interview, whatever it is, I think when you've got that clarity and confidence to convey with conviction your message to the world and your mission to the world, I think that engages audiences. So that's in a very practical sense, I think. And I think because of that, you get that level of influence. I think when you show up to a room, a meeting or a boardroom or whatever the environment, if you've got that clarity and that conviction of self, then you have there's a sense of energy that comes with that. And I think people perceive it when you're in the room, and your own presence, in a practical sense, the energy that you are imparting is a little bit infectious. It's like that emotional contagion. And so, that emotional intelligence that you bring as well is, in a practical sense, just gives you that level of executive influence that you may not have had if you didn't have such clarity on who you are. And, whether you are writing a resume or responding to a job application, or again, having that clarity gives you the practical application to be able to write it down and convey it so that people understand it. If you haven't done the thinking, then you can potentially waffle on about what you think you. And the other practical thing is about selling your value. People sometimes don't have a strong sense of value. We hear a lot about imposter syndrome. We hear a lot about the inner voice that can be negative and bringing ourselves down a lot. Having a personal brand is one way of uplifting yourself, because you've done that thinking about understanding your self-worth and really that specialist expertise that you bring, that there's no one else in the world like you or who does things the way you do. And when you understand what that specialism is, that's a really compelling way of conveying your value. So I think in a practical sense, to cut through the noise, when we talked earlier today about it being really super competitive marketplace, being able to articulate your value is really important.
Yeah, that clarity to because of change that can hit people's career at different times, whether it's instigated, by the individual, or whether it's change that occurs, and almost that change it's done to us. I think that clarity that you talk about, for me, it feels like that stabilizing factor, because even though things might be changing around you, you've still got a really strong sense of who you are, what you want, what you stand for, what that inner brilliance is, that then I imagine, when you're going through change and it can feel quite turbulent, that's that stabilizing factor that keeps you, stable and where you need to be, so you can withstand everything that might be happening as you're going through change.
I think totally. And you look at how much change we've all had to go through in recent years. We all had to pivot with the pandemic lockdowns, and some of us would have found that very, very uncomfortable and thought, well, how do we change? But being deliberate is about being deliberate in the choices that you make, and being deliberate to be flexible and adaptable. And I think that when you've got that sense of awareness and that strong sense of self, that you can kind of ride those waves with a little bit more certainty, because who you are doesn't change. Sure, you may, but again, I think having a strong personal brand doesn't mean that you don't continue to evolve. That's also about understanding, having a growth mindset and always exploring possibilities and how you can continue to grow and learn and become even better and evolve with the ever-changing marketplace and the ever-changing context that we find ourselves in. You look now, people make choices about where they work and products that they purchase based on, are they aligned with my values? Are they, do I dig their message? And so if you're a leader that has articulated what your values and what your vision is, then you become a beacon and you start attracting people who dig that message, and therefore you are more likely to retain people who are a better fit, and also attract clients who are a better fit, because people already come with an understanding about what you stand for.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think that helps that trust too, and that trust in the person and that leader. Ros, at some point or another, for all leaders, they are very likely to face crisis or something unintended, something that happens that has that opportunity to affect their brand. What's the advice that you would give in those circumstances? So if a leader finds themselves in the circumstance where there is an issue that may affect their brand, what advice would you give them to see that issue through?
Yeah, well, we've certainly seen some classic don't do's, haven't we, in recent years, where brands, big organizational brands, have been in crisis, and the leaders have literally gone to ground. We haven't even seen the leaders. So the whole public is left wanting, not understanding what's happening and why they're not coming to say what the position of that brand is on that particular issue. So when there's a crisis, you don't go underground. The first thing is, well, firstly, I would say, is be proactive. You need to not, when you're on the front foot, you can then better try and take control of the narrative, rather, because things run at the speed of light. Once things hit social media, things run at the speed of light. So the first thing is to be proactive, getting on the front foot, and being transparent, saying what you know, even if it's not much, but tell people what you know. And then thirdly as well is empathizing, because sometimes, inevitably, in some crisis like that, there might be someone who's impacted. And so now, if it's appropriate, then apologize, but show the emotional intelligence to try and appreciate that the situation that they're in, if in fact there's a crisis, that if you're a leader of a brand that's in a crisis, then have some empathy for the people who are perceived to be impacted by the crisis. And then fourthly, you need to be showing what you're doing about it to rectify the situation. So, not and that you've got your best people on it. We understand, we're really sorry, we appreciate this is not the ideal situation, but we've got our best people on it, looking at a solution right now, and then literally go back and close that loop when you have more information. So sometimes it's about putting out that holding statement so that people understand, great, we've heard from the leader. Now, okay, they're doing their best to resolve it, and let's wait to hear the next update. So you've got to keep updating that situation, because again, if there's a void, people will create their own assumptions and judgments about what's happening, and that they will perceive you don't care if you don't, so, these crises, no one likes a crisis, but if you can get on that front foot, be transparent, empathise, and also show that you've got your best people onto finding a solution, and then continue to close the loop, that's going to stand you in best stead to do some reputational action fixing. And sometimes out of these crises, you can actually enhance your reputation. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, because it's all about people's perception of how you're dealing with it, isn't it?
Yes.
Often, and I get the whole going to ground thing, because I think for a lot of leaders, it's hitting that insecurity around, am I capable? Can I lead the organization? Can I lead my team through this crisis? And so the natural inclination, I think, is to go, well, we'll shut the curtains and I'll do my work behind the scenes. And once I'm tinkering and I've kind of got it, then I'll go ta-da, and the curtains will open again. But certainly the public, that doesn't instill that confidence and trust. And the public do want to, and your stakeholders, whether it's not, broader public, but whoever is impacted, they do want to see what, your approach. And I think in that, because trust, I talk about this a lot, but that trust is built in the micro actions. It's everything that you're doing and saying, and people are observing that. And if we just go to ground, shut the curtains, it doesn't instill that level of confidence and trust, because people don't know what you're doing.
No, exactly right. And we've seen leaders literally, they've had to leave the organisation because they've gone to ground and they've left it to the PR department. And it's not good enough. Leaders these days need to be training for this kind of thing. Reputation, management is 101 for any leader. And this is why I believe leaders need to be cognizant of not only their own personal brand, but the brand of the organisation for which they're representing. And you need to infuse reputation across every portfolio, because it's about risk management. And in a way, reputation is the mother of all risk, because every other risk can become a reputational risk. And, we've seen the public is not, can be, look what happened to Scott Morrison when the fires were on a few years ago, and he was having a holiday in Hawaii and he didn't come back home straight away. When he got slammed for that, because, and whilst in one respect people might say, well, he's worked hard as the Prime Minister all year, he deserves a holiday, but that's not what the people needed at that time. And so he never was forgiven for that. And I've seen many, many leaders in my career of where I've been a PR person behind a community leader or a political leader, and I've seen if they're not front and centre, the public is not very forgiving if they're not proactive and out the front, because people want to be supported. They're going through uncertain times where they feel that their own personal lives have been impacted, and if you're not out the front being supportive of that, then it's hard to claw your reputation back from that, because people remember.
Yeah, and that was one of the things you said right up front, Ros, around that transparency. And sometimes even when we don't have a lot to say, and maybe we don't have the situation under the control that we want, but we've got the opportunity to build trust when we're being honest. And as you say, you get your best people on it, you're showing that absolute effort, and in good intention around getting it sorted. And I think that's what helps people to build confidence. And they'd much rather hear that than be left in the dark. And then, as you say, they're spinning their own story in relation to that.
Yeah, totally. People understand you might not have all the answers straight away, but it's about getting on that front foot and saying that, being honest that, we're aware something's occurred, we're really sorry, this is what we know right now. And at this point in time, we've got our best people on rectifying the situation. Look at what's happened with Optus, and with people were left in the dark for hours and hours on end, and people just didn't have any sense of how the company was dealing with the crisis. So even if you don't know much, that's okay. Just say that, but then come back when you know more, and you keep the public informed as often as it takes. It's not good enough either to just trot out somebody that's not high enough profile to represent the brand. The leader really does need. It doesn't always have to be the CEO, but it does need to be someone of a executive level, I believe, and someone with that almost subject matter expertise. Sometimes I think what I've been involved in crises where it's quite a technical situation, and I've had like a CEO and the subject matter expertise fronting the cameras together. So there's different ways to address it, but you certainly don't go underground. You must get on the front foot. You must be honest and say what you know, and then keep that message every time there's an update. Give people an update, because it'll still be playing out on social media or in the media outlets. So you've got to try and take charge of the narrative as best you can.
Yeah, good advice, Ros. I know that if leaders listening haven't yet faced a crisis, not that we want them to, and not that we're wishing that on them, but at some point or another we will, in our careers as leaders, because that's what happens. Ros, your most recent book is called Inner Brilliance, and as I said, we'll pop that in the show notes so people can find out where to get a copy. Tell us a little bit about the book. What are you really hoping the book is going to achieve for individuals that pick up a copy of it? And what's some of the work that you're doing to help individuals around Inner Brilliance?
Sure. Well, I've got a copy here, and as you said at the start, it really does have a great cover, and that the cover is spiral, because as I said at the outset, people's inner brilliance is within them. It's waiting to be unearthed and tapped into and to be expressed in all of its wonderful glory. And so the book, I guess, has a model, and it's about how you develop a personal brand, but in doing so, expressing your inner brilliance. And so it's kind of got it's a step-by-step guide. It's a very practical book that helps people step through, understanding what their passion is, identifying their purpose, creating a vision for their personal brand, articulating their core values and their trademark behaviours around those core values so that they can show up consistently, how to position themselves in their marketplace, so how to craft a compelling personal brand narrative, how to articulate their value proposition, and then how to also leverage that through strategic positioning within the marketplace, and also how to build that profile, whether it's on social media and all of various tools and tactics that you can have to build your visibility across the broad spectrum of what's available out in online media today. There's so many opportunities. So there's also a section on the book if you want to monetize your personal brand. So it's not just about so if you just want to build a personal brand and get clear on who you are, what you stand for, that kind of thing, it's fine for that. But if you really wanted to build your profile and your visibility, and then also how you monetize that by building signature programs, and how you package up your intellectual property, how you develop a signature methodology, that's going to be what you leverage. Because when you think about it, people come to you because of your uniqueness. So this helps you amplify your uniqueness and build your influence and really elevate your self-worth. And there's a really practical model, I think, that helps guide you through that process.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And where can people grab a copy of the book, Ros?
Well, you can get it straight off my website, which is at rosweadman.com. So that's ROSWEADMAN.com. Or you can buy it from any of the online retailers as well, like Amazon or Booktopia, any of those. But you can buy it direct from the website in Australia as well.
Excellent. I think, Ros, that it helps. The way you've explained it there helps to demystify, what what is included when we think about our inner brilliance. And I've loved our conversation today because it's gone to, what your unique value proposition is, and really tapping into values, behaviors, mindset, which is where we started, that intention, and really being able to think about that. Because I think as leaders, we're often on the little wheel, that kind of continues to spin. And being able to tap into your inner brilliance, we're so much better off when we have moments of reflection and quiet and just thinking time to really tap into what that inner brilliance is. And I think that helps us to be more strategic as leaders too. It helps us to be more deliberate and focused on what we want, intentional about getting what we want. And as I love the distinction you made before. You said it's not about ambition, and not solely about ambition, but it's actually around what am I connecting to here that's really going to align to a bigger impact than what I can achieve for myself.
Yeah, that's what certainly lights my flame every day when I wake up, knowing through my understanding of what I want to achieve, and in terms of my legacy, and through my work, I inspired to wake up and every day to do that. And I want other people to experience that self energy and that inspiration, that just through self, and so I've tried to infuse that through the book, and I hope that does spark people's intention, because you can, with personal branding, not everyone has a personal brand, but everyone has a reputation, and that's a really big distinction as well. That if you don't have a personal brand, you're more likely to be, I guess, more generic. In product marketing, they'd call that a commoditized product. You're just part of, but if you stand out because you're clear and your personal brand is strong and authentic, then you're defining and helping shape your reputation. Everything you do is more of a reputation defining moment that you're being deliberate about through what you think, what you say, and what you do. And that's what inner brilliance, that's, I guess, a key message of the inner brilliance.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Ros. Thanks for sharing all the insights today. I've literally got a page of notes that I've taken away from me. I'm sure everybody else will too. And it's been wonderful to have you on and just to hear about your inner brilliance. So thank you very much, Ros.
Thanks so much, Rita. It's been a delight. Thanks. Till next time.
See you soon.
Bye.